Welcome, everyone, to this week's Global Intelligence Update. And as always, we've got a great guest with us. But let me introduce you guys first to Dave Greenberg, who's joining us from New Zealand. So, Dave is one of New Zealand's longest serving rescue helicopter crewmen, completing nearly 4,000 missions across his 25-year career aboard a rescue helicopter based in Wellington, New Zealand. During the pandemic, Dave served as a response manager on New Zealand's national COVID-19 response team, using his operational and strategic expertise to help coordinate the response to outbreaks. This role saw him regularly attending and briefing senior government members, including the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Dave will be joining us today talking on the topic of bracing for impact. Are you ready for the worst working day? Dave, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Global Intelligence Update.
Thank you, Chris, and hi, everyone. Some of you might have seen me before. I've been lucky enough to be invited back. And what I'm going to be doing today is kind of continuing what I talk about in the realm of being ready for your worst working day, whether that's a PR disaster or a natural disaster or whatever that might happen to look like. So I am going to switch over so what I'm basically going to be talking about today is being ready when the stuff hits the fan. And we all get the choice between chaos, all the things that come with chaos. There's just no one's really cooperating. Things aren't going well. So we get to choose between chaos or being professional, like I was in my career, and hopefully more in control than out of it. But start with a bit of a story, and this is something that happened many years ago. We were on the helicopter flying from the North Island to the South Island. It was a winter's night, about 10 at night, totally dark. And all of a sudden, the helicopter started making a noise like I'd never heard before, and then started shuddering like I'd never felt before. And then all of a sudden, everything just stopped. And we were only at about 2,500 feet above Cook Strait. And the four of us on board knew that we were going to be going down into the sea. The pilot and I did what we needed to do. We made radio calls to let other people know that we were in trouble and where we would be going down. And then we ran through the emergency procedures one more time. And then just when the pilot called brace, 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 which was our clue that we are going to be hitting the water within the next few seconds, I went into my brace position. Now, many of you will be familiar with the brace position from when you go on flights, and they talk about it in the briefing. And in the helicopter, it was different. Our brace position was different, and depending where we were sitting in the helicopter and the direction we were facing, the brace position we used would be different. But for my brace position that night, I sat up straight in my seat, put my feet flat on the floor. I took the hand closest to my exit and I gripped the seat below me. And then I bent over and I put the other hand over my head. And a couple of seconds later, we hit the water. And as we hit the cabin, even though the doors were closed, the cabin started to fill with icy water. And as we knew it would, the helicopter started turning over, and we knew it would turn upside down. And as the water hit my cheek, I took what I knew could be my last breath ever. And then we kept on turning, and suddenly I was just engulfed in darkness. It was pitch dark. I was holding my breath, As soon as we stabilized, I used the hand from behind my head to release my seatbelt. And as I started floating up, which is now the floor of the helicopter, I then released my hand that was gripping under the seat and I pointed to where I knew my exit would be. So my left hand was my situational awareness. And as I started swimming across the cabin, I suddenly got kicked in the face. And I was really happy about that because I knew that was the nurse who was in the back with me. And I knew she was alive and I knew she was fighting for her own survival. And with that, I followed her in the dark out the door on her side. And then we made our way to the surface. And when I got to the surface, I took a huge breath and then I removed my blindfolded goggles and I could see the rest of us, all four of us on the floor on the surface of the pool. So this wasn't a real crash. This was a training exercise, but it was a real training exercise called Hewitt, Helicopter Underwater Escape Training. And people often ask me, why in the world would we put ourselves through this kind of training when the likelihood of a crash was very slim and the likelihood of a crash in the water was even slimmer? And the answer was really simple. And that's when something goes wrong, I wanted to have at least a little bit of muscle memory of what to do when the stuff hits the fan. And so we were required to do this training every 2 years. Some people hated it, some loved it. I'm in the camp of loving it. And every time we did it, we would go through various scenarios and just keep on going in the water and redoing it and redoing it. And even though the chances were slim, sometimes stuff really does go wrong. And this is a helicopter very similar to ours, BK 117, sitting upside down in the water near south of the South Island. This helicopter, not mine, was flying for rescue. They were going to land on an island. They got caught up in all sorts of things that went wrong, but basically they crashed in the water. And the three people all walked away, despite the fact that one of them was unconscious in the back of the helicopter. But the two that got out thanked Hewitt, the Hewitt training, that they knew what to do. And then they were able to go down and rescue their mate. So even though we didn't ever expect to crash, I always knew I'd be ready if we did. And the thing about what we do is we didn't expect to crash, but as you look at me in this picture, I'm standing in the doorway of the helicopter. I was in a helmet in case we crashed. My flight suit was flame proof. My survival vest, the green vest I'm wearing, not only a life jacket, but it also had all sorts of survival gear. We had gloves. And if there was a fire, the gloves would protect our hands. And our boots had steel caps. And it goes on and on and on. Because one of the things we were very good about was identifying risks and then preparing for them. And something's going, there we go. So I covered the identifying risks and preparing last year when I spoke to the group. So what I'd like to do this year is just really review risk identification really quickly. Risk identification is looking at the event. So what event would make today my worst working day? And that might be crashing into the sea. What's the likelihood that it will happen? Very unlikely. But the impact or the severity, if it does happen, is severe. And the risk score for that one would end up high. So basically, what you do is you go through all your risks. And at the end of the session, I'll give you the chance to download a PDF, which has hundreds of risks you might want to consider in your business. But you risk them, you score them, and then you prepare yourself in case those risks happen. And the way you prepare is either you eliminate the risk or you mitigate the risk, but you do something so that you're prepared if it does happen. But what I'd like to do tonight is look at the next phase in my resilience, ring of resilience, and that's response. What do you do when you know that the stuff has hit the fan? And that's in my world what we call the response phase. And one of the things I know is that there are people, I know them and you probably know them too, that react to everything like it's a major disaster. It could be a cut on the finger. They react in crisis mode. They just overreact. The same with the cut fingers they would if God forbid their child just got hit by a car. And one of the things I'm really clear on is that when everything's a crisis, nothing's a crisis. So if we treat everything like crisis mode, then we're never going to be able to handle it appropriately. So I talk about three different ways that we should be able to handle this stuff. Number one is business as usual. So in this picture that you're looking at, the helicopter was landing on a state highway just north of Wellington. You could see the fire brigade is there setting us up to land. Now, if as we were landing, we saw something that was dangerous to us, we would abort the landing and we'd find another place to land. It happened a lot. It wasn't anything, no big deal. We didn't have to write any reports. We didn't have to tell our leaders about it. We just went and found a better place to land, and it fell within our business as usual. The next type of thing that you might come across is an incident. Now, an incident is something where your normal team might not be able to handle it as part of BAU. You might need to bring in other teams or contractors, but it's an incident. It's not too big a deal. And in the picture I'm showing here, that Air New Zealand plane in the background had just landed with an engine on fire. And they landed on the runway. You could see people have evacuated. They're well behind the plane. It wasn't that big of a deal. But in an incident, they needed other teams. They needed someone to go and tow the airplane. The airport company got involved because the Wellington's only got one runway. Well, two, because you could take off or land from either end. But this closed the airport essentially for the better part of an hour. So it was an incident, and the team on board certainly let their C-suite know what was going on, because Air New Zealand wanted to make comments about this is no big deal. We've got it. Everyone was safe, and on they went. But then the next highest category, and the one where you should act like it's a crisis, is when it's crisis mode. So this was the plane in Canada about 6 or 8 weeks ago that flipped over on landing. Now, this is a crisis. A crisis is a time when your business is going to have severe financial risk. Someone dies using your product or flying on your plane, and it could cause it could cause the business to go out of business if it's severe enough. Now, when you have crisis mode, then you have to handle this. Your C-suite needs to be involved, governance needs to be involved, and it's a big deal. But as you see in the pie chart, BAU, business as usual, if you're well trained and resourced, that should be 85, 90% of what you're dealing with. Incidents should be a small bit, maybe 5 to 10%, and crises should be much smaller, 2 to 3% if you're unlucky. So I remind you that when everything's a crisis, nothing's a crisis. And I know a lot of the people here that are watching this are small businesses like me. When I work with companies or with people, I look at them and say 1 to 3 people is very small. Then 4 to 20 is what I would consider a SME, a small to medium enterprise, and then over 20 would be a corporate. Now, those numbers might vary a little bit, but the thing we need to keep in mind, the same incident could affect us very differently if, like the woman on the left, the woman on the right is small business. They've got a kid, the babysitter cancels. That could be a real incident for them because for me, if something goes wrong and I'm supposed to be presenting, that is an incident. And what I need to do is be able to prevent that from being a crisis. Now, in the middle, there's a SME, the same problem with a babysitter not showing up. There's more options, and there are other people involved that might be able to help. And on the left side, as a corporate, the CEO of a corporate, the same incident would have less impact, potentially. Or in all three instances, it might be an incident that the person needs to be very involved in. So I'm aware that when I talk about C-suites and when I talk about governance, I don't have C-suite. I have my partner who is my governance. She tells me what to do and I do it. But when it comes to my business, when I need help, I have to go outside of me. I have to bring in other people. And when it comes to governance, I love that I've got Mike Orlandi that I could text and ask a question. I've got other people in my life that I could get the help I need to get through whatever shows up in my life. But what I'd like to do is just talk about the brace position. So this is the brace position that you would be used to when you're flying. This is a typical one. If you have a seat in front of you, then you put your head against that seat. If you don't have a seat in front of you, then you go down as far as you can to your knees and you get ready for impact. But what I do is I use brace as a framework for the 5 things you need to think about when the stuff does hit the fan. So brace is a framework, and the B talks about business as usual. And what I mean by this is whatever is going on in your company, no matter what size it is, if all of your focus is on the problem, who's looking after BAU? Who's answering emails? Who's answering the phone? Who's looking after all of your other clients? And this is one of the things that goes wrong in big companies is everyone's focus goes to the problem and people forget about their customers, their stakeholders. And I'm going to talk about executive oversight in a moment. So the next thing we've got, the R, is about doing a rapid assessment. So when we do a rapid assessment, it's about asking the right questions and figuring out what's going on. Now, last year, if you go back and look at the YouTube video, I talked about the 6 questions you should be asking anytime things go wrong. And the 6 questions are: what's the nature of the situation? Who's leading our response? Now, if you're a sole entrepreneur, The chances are you're going to say it's me leading the response. Well, maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe that's when you need someone from outside who's looking after the problem while you concentrate on BAU. Question number 3 is, what do we know to be a fact? Question 4 is, what don't we know? Question 5 is, what do we want to understand and when? And then question 6 is about setting up an action plan. What actions do we want to take? So I'm not going to go into that any more than that, but you need to do a rapid assessment to the best of your ability. Then the A is activating the correct teams. So if you're it, that's fine. But what outside help do you need? Who do you need to bring in? Is it your IT support? Is it your banker? Is it your next door neighbor who could deal with the leak so you could do your online presentation? You've just got to activate the correct people, the correct teams in order to handle the situation. Then the C of brace is to communicate. And one of the places where things go wrong quite often is that companies, no matter what size they are, don't communicate enough. We need to be communicating upward to governance. We need to be going sideways. We need to be communicating down. We need to keep our clients up to date. We need to keep stakeholders up to date. And we need to remember that no comment or not putting out any comment just leaves room for someone else to come in and fill the gap. And we all know that if you don't say anything, people are going to make assumptions. And it's going to be on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn that Dave Greenberg's in trouble and it's so bad he's not talking about it. We need to communicate. We need to over communicate. Crisis communication, if it truly is a crisis, is about over communicating, not under communicating. On the helicopter, one of the main things we did when we were winching, which is the steel cable coming off the side of the helicopter, the pilot was sitting in the front right-hand seat, and I would be standing outside the helicopter on the left-hand side of the heli. The pilot could not see what was going on down below. So my job was to communicate enough so that the pilot knew whether I needed the helicopter to move forward, backward, left, right, up, down. But we were always communicating, because when things were silent, to the pilot, that meant things were so bad that I didn't know how to communicate it to them. So if we got to a point where during a winch operation where I didn't need to say anything, I would specifically say, I'm going to shut up now. You're in a good position. I'm going to shut up now until things change. And then the pilot would visibly relax because they knew everything was okay. But if I just shut up and didn't say a word, they would tense up. You could feel it in the helicopter. Everything would go to really become very tense. So we need to over communicate. And then the E of this is executive oversight. Now, I have gotten myself in trouble with CEOs and boards with what I'm about to tell you, but I share it. I share it openly, and it's what I truly believe. You, as the boss, should not be so involved in the incident that you're in the weeds, because in the weeds you're not getting the big picture. And what I do, when I do a keynote, and I'll just tell a story, and I'll say, when the helicopter was going on out in 25 years, I never had our CEO or our chairperson say, "This sounds like a really hard mission. I'm going to jump in the helicopter to help you out." And everyone goes, of course not. You wouldn't let the CEO into the helicopter when you're going on a rescue. And we all know that if our website went down, the chances are, unless you're like me and you fix your own website, but if you have an IT team, the CEO or the C suite aren't going to go and try to help them fix the problem. They're going to want updates from the tech team. They're going to want to let their stakeholders, their bosses, clients, whoever they need to know, they're going to communicate outwards, the C-suite, but they're not going to try to help. But then suddenly there's a data breach or there's something, a big cyber attack, and all of a sudden, I've seen it time and time again, where the CEO or the C suite want to get directly involved in the problem. And that is not where they belong. So the next time, as the boss, you're trying to get involved in the weeds when something's going on, just have a think about my situation on the helicopter, where there is no way in the world we would let the CEO into the helicopter to come and help us. And if we wouldn't let them do that, then why, as the CEO, are you going to try to help your team? And the reason that people want to get in the weeds is usually because either A, they think they could do it better, that's not your job, or B, they don't trust the team to handle it correctly. And if that's the case, then you've got a much bigger problem that you need to solve today than you need to solve that today, not when the crisis is going on. So the brace formula, business as usual, make sure you keep an eye on that. Do the rapid assessment, activate the correct teams, communicate and over communicate, and the executive oversight. Now, when I talked about my brace position, I talked about the my left hand being my situational awareness. And when I run this in a keynote, or if I had all of you sitting there with your cameras on, I would walk you through the brace position right now. And I would get you to sit up straight. I'd put one hand under your seat, bend over, put a hand over your head, and I would get you to practice the brace position. And I wouldn't do it because I expect when the stuff hits the fan, you're really going to go in the brace position. If there's anyone else in the room, they probably think you've lost it. But I want you to brace for impact. When you hear about something going wrong, the best thing you could possibly do is sit down, take a deep breath, and let it all just happen and think about what's going on. When I taught crew resource management to air teams, to air crew, one of the first things that we teach pilots to do is when the buzzers and the alarms start going off, they should literally sit on their hands or figuratively sit on their hands for 30 seconds to a minute, unless the aircraft is going to crash imminently. It's really good to just sit there and take it all in, because once we start pressing the buttons that are flashing red and try to silence the alarms, we get so focused that we're in the weeds and we're not able to see the big picture. So brace for impact. Take a deep breath, take it all in, and then run through these steps. And I promise you'll be a lot better off. When you do the rapid assessment, that's the time when you decide, can we handle this with our BAU teams? Is it an incident where we need a bit more help, or is this truly a crisis? And if it is a crisis, think about your insurance brokers, about your lawyers, about all the people that you need to bring in to help, and bring them in early. Because if you let it get away from you, then it's much harder to bring it back in. So you need to have those people on speed dial and ready to talk and help. So, Chris, just before I move on, I know you're there. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to the next bit? We're good.
Looks like you're
Cool.
good. Yeah.
So,
Everyone's
okay.
intrigued by the story.
We'll go with that. That's great. Um, so the next bit I promised you I would talk about tonight is recovery. Is going into so we identify our risks, we prepare for what might go wrong, then we respond, and at some point the response phase stops and we need to move into recovery, start going towards getting back to BAU, business as usual. Now, the real problem here, it's not a problem. One of the things to consider here is recovery looks like different things depending on the situation. So, when on the helicopter, if we responded to a car accident, we would go, we'd land, we'd pick up the patient or patients, we'd fly them back to hospital. Um, our recovery for us was essentially done when the helicopter was back at base, all the equipment was cleaned, and we were ready for the next mission. For the police, the recovery didn't start until the road was opened up, so the traffic's flowing again. They finished their investigation, or the part of the investigation that needs to go on straight away. Um, so their recovery, where ours might be an hour or two, theirs might be a whole shift, 12 hours. And then we've got the patient and their family, and the recovery for them could be days, weeks, months, or years, depending on how seriously someone was injured or if someone died. So recovery looks different depending on what lens we look through it. But one of the things I was very aware of is that sleep is a weapon. I'm very clear on that, that we all think that we could just keep going. When the stuff hits the fan, we just do what we need to do and we keep on going. Now, when I was on the COVID-19 outbreak response team, when we didn't have an active outbreak going on, we generally worked a 12-hour shift. We'd come in at around 7 a.m. and go home, be back home by 7 p.m. And someone else was on call overnight. When something hit, like sometimes it would hit at 5:30 in the afternoon and we'd find out about a new outbreak. On that first day, we knew that we were going to be not getting much sleep. Like we came in at 7 and we might not go home until midnight or 1 in the morning. So that first 24 to 48 hours, do what you need to do to get it all underway. But you need to remember that none of us could go on for too long without sleep. And one of the true gifts that I've had as an emergency service worker is the ability to have a nap any day, anytime. And I just interestingly saw an article on the news, a news site in the last couple of days to say that men, particularly who had a nap at least 3 times a week, had a much lower chance of heart disease with everything else being equal than a man that didn't have sleep a nap 3 days a week. So our body needs enough sleep. Sleep is not the kind of thing where you could go for multiple days and then get a good sleep and then get right back into it, because it doesn't bank up like that. We need to make sure that we're getting enough sleep every day, and it truly is a weapon. I know that when I was tired, that's when mistakes are made. That's when things don't go right. It's when we would have a lot of own goals. Just we would do stupid things when we were overtired. And when I started on the helicopter in the 90s, we didn't have enough crew. There were three crew and three pilots, and we just kind of would work 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row without any proper breaks, and we thought that was fine. Um, but today, any professional first responder, we've got shifts. We're aware of fatigue. We're aware of the need to sleep. So I remind you that sleep is a weapon, and no matter how bad things are in the business, you need to make sure you've got some of that. Now, last thing in the circle is review. And one of the things I know, to create the resilience that you need in your business, you need to review how things went. And what we would do at the end of every helicopter mission, as we were doing our cleaning and our refueling, we just have a quick chat. Usually at this point, the medical staff was still in hospital. So it would be me as the crew person and the pilot. And first off, what went right? Like we went and we did it. What went right as part of the review? And what went wrong? And it isn't necessarily a big wrong, like something really bad, but we always would look at what little thing could we correct on that would let us do the job better the next time. Now, sometimes the review, something went very wrong, and then we'd have a formal review and an after action review, it's called. And we would do a formal one where we might get a committee together. If someone got injured on the job, we would always review it. But we were very good about reviewing what went on. And the thing is that it's really easy to look at something and go, this is what happened. In air crashes, I'm a big fan of Air Crash Investigation, the TV show. There's always usually an element of pilot error. And the investigators never stop and say, this was pilot error, because they look at all the things that contribute, the contributing factors to make the accident happen. And it's really, really important that we do that and we understand what went wrong. So if we look at this little video here, and will it start? All right, let me just get my mouse going, and let's try that again. So here comes this guy. He paid his money. He's running across, and at the very end of it, his emergency rope came off. So if that would have come off, or if it wasn't on there properly, had he fallen through, it could have been deadly. It looks like a pretty high drop. Now, the easy answer, if I asked all of you what went wrong, the easy answer is that the guy working for the company didn't attach the rope correctly. And that is definitely a possibility. It could be that the carabiner failed. It could be a training problem, that the person working was never trained properly. The only one who's innocent here is the client, because the client paid their money and they expect to be safe. And that's what happens when clients come to us. They pay us the money and they expect us to do a good job and to keep them safe, whatever that looks like based on what you do. And when things don't go right, we don't deliver on time, we don't, something goes wrong, Um, if unfortunately someone dies using your product, well, that's when it's a crisis mode, and there better be a good review. Um, there's things in the news tonight that where governments come out with one version of a truth, and then video evidence comes or written documents come, and then they have to come up with another version of what they believe to be true. Um, we need to be better than that. And I'd like to think that the people who are watching this are in that group that understands that we need to be better than that. We need to review things and make sure that the mistakes don't keep happening and that they're reviewed well. And also to remember to acknowledge what went well. A lot of us forget to do that. So the last thing just that I really want to just really stress is that whether we have chaos or we have control, it's really down to us. The There's a lot of sayings, memes about life isn't what goes wrong; it's how we respond to it. And I do believe that's true. The stuff is going to happen, but how do we respond to it? And I'll give you another example. With all the problems we're having in New Zealand with the economy and with public service being stripped down, I just had a month worth of work postponed. Postponed is, I'm going to air quote it, because in government speak, postponed probably means it's never going to happen. Now, as a small business owner, losing a month of income is not good. And so, first thing I did today is a post on LinkedIn, and now I'm going through. But I can't just sit here and go, poor me, and expect that things will be okay. I've got to take action. I've got to take the right actions in order to get through this. And quite often, I go to my 6 questions. The nature of the situation is I just lost a big contract. The Who's leading my response? That's me. But when you start looking at what do we not know to be a fact and what don't we know, look at those 2 questions. Um, Things to sort of start falling together pretty quick. So that's what I've got for you. I'd love to take some questions. And then after we do questions, if there are any, I'm going to put up a QR code where you could download some of the things from tonight and also download a copy of my book. Here we do. So I've written a book. It's only available as a ebook these days, and I'd love to give you a copy. You could download a free copy. But Chris, I'm open for questions if anyone's got any.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dave. A lot of gold nuggets, I have to say. And I see we've got a comment from Andrea saying, I remember that with New Zealand government where they postponed $1.5 million worth of contracts for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that would
Ah.
hurt. None of my. I wish I had a $2.5 million contract to lose, to be honest. But yeah, the I didn't have the chat going while I was speaking. I'm just oh, I didn't realize you were doing it. Thanks, Andrea, for playing along.
Yeah.
Um,
She had a
yeah,
good brace position there.
that's great. Thank you. Any? Oh, Karen, is that the when I showed the video of the person
Yeah.
with the harness? Yep,
Yeah,
that
geez.
sends chills through me every time. I If you download the book, one of the stories I openly tell is a time I flew outside the helicopter and stood outside of it. Everything was fine. Got back to the airport and I went to disconnect my harness and I found I wasn't hooked on. And it was all about distraction. And
Wow.
yeah, nearly killed myself. And I wouldn't have had anyone to blame but myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Mm.
intense. Does anyone have any questions? Would anyone like to ask Dave anything?
Can I just maybe add, or just
Hmm,
it's just something for myself, because the
please.
big thing that I've learned, thank you so much, Dave, for this and giving me some insight as well, because I'm a small business, just like a one man business. And the biggest thing is that you've touched on is identifying the risks. When you're running a business or a small business, you are so busy with a business that you don't really make time to go and do that, because everything is running and doing and working and going on. And I think it's the lesson that I've learned today for myself is that I really need to just make some time and see and work through some scenarios of risks for my business, but also being so involved in this business. I think it's a very good idea to just get an outsider, or a you know a friend and people that can identify the risks for me, because then you don't always see it from the inside.
That's a great observation. And one of the best tools, and this is ChatGPT or any of the AI, if you put in a prompt, something like your role is acting as my emergency manager, tell it about your business, and then ask it to identify risks. You'd be amazed what it comes up with. And if you go to the QR code and download, I've got a whole bunch of risks to look at, and I'll be honest, that list came from ChatGPT. Um, and what I usually talk about is I wouldn't pay me for my corporate rates to come in and fix my company or look at it, because I wouldn't. Um, but yet my risk is probably worse than a big company, because if things do go wrong, and we all do this, like if we're going to do a presentation in another city, most of us will fly the day before and give us plenty of time for flight delays, and people who've had babies have gates at the top of stairs, and they put covers on their electric sockets. So as humans, we're really good at identifying risks and doing something. It's just about taking the time to do it for our business.
Absolutely. And I'm slap bang in the middle of ISO certification, which is a new thing for us here in South Africa, for me as a company. So it really opens up. And I mean, your talk has come just in time for that as well.
Well, thank you. Which ISO are you going for? Do you know the
So,
number?
yeah, it's the 13485, 2016, I think.
Oh, okay. In the late 90s, I got ISO certification for the rescue helicopter. That was a real learning curve. So good luck with that. It's great.
Yes.
And
Dave,
the other thing, yeah, you did just real quick, Chris. The
yeah.
other thing I'm doing is because a lot of companies need help, and I wouldn't pay me to do it. I'm coming out with a online program and a workbook to help companies through it. I'll get word out to all of you through that. But this is the QR code. If you want to download the book or any of the stuff, I'd appreciate if you do the survey and just give me some feedback and get in touch if you need any help. I'll shut up now, Chris.
No, Dave, I was going to ask about the book. And Corin also dropped a comment here saying that you can use Perplexity. It's brilliant for risk management.
Oh, okay.
And
I will do that.
there's another comment from Sam asking, is there a way to stress test these strategies?
Yes, and that's called running scenarios. I've done scenarios for everything from, your car breaks down to sinking a cruise ship off of New Zealand. They wouldn't let me do the cruise ship for real, but we ran that as a functional exercise. So it's really kind of like the UA training that I talked about in my opening story. It's about finding ways to create a real enough environment that you go and solve the problems that might be coming up. And again, in this program I'm developing, I've got a whole section on scenarios and some prompts you could use to help with those. But there definitely are ways. And Sam, if you get in touch with me, I'd be happy to share a few ideas with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. Is there anything else from anyone? Okay, looks like we're good. Dave, I just want to thank you again for. Sorry, did
Thank
Andrea?
you, Dave. Yeah, sorry. Thank you,
that's
Dave.
right.
It was really great insights. Thank you so much for sharing. I may reach out to you in one-to-one to speak to one-to-one next week. I'm unwell this week, but maybe next week we can, if you have time to catch up. I would like to catch up.
Yes, send me my contact details. If they're not on that slide, you could find me. Just Google. But you'll be able to find me, and I'd love to chat. I'm in New Zealand, so we're about 10 hours different from you at the moment. But I always happy to speak and help where I can.
Great.
I was going to. I don't know if you can hear me, Chris.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's really interesting when you are in a business, whether you're a solopreneur or you've got humans or you're a medium-sized enterprise, there's always a focus on making sure you keep your financials in check, and there's risk management in the area of financial capability. Likewise in marketing, there's always a risk component, but I certainly think that, Dave, the timeliness of your conversation, especially when you look at economically around the world, so not just in New Zealand, but also here in Australia, South Africa, and if you look at our counterparts in the US. So I think this has been really timely to be having this conversation around bracing and ensuring that you have got the foundations of your risk management in place that you can then build upon. So thank you for taking the time to share that with us, because it is very timely.
Thank you, Andrea. And I'm just putting my email. A couple of people have asked me. I'll just put my email in there. So Perfect. That's my email address and in the chat. And I'd be happy to chat. And Andrew, nice to see you, and see you when I'm back in Brisbane.
Anytime. Anytime for a good steak.
Yes.
Thanks,
we
team.
can probably stop recording now.
Guys. That's going to be it for the week. Just want to say thank you again, Dave. And
Andrea.
Rada. Yes, you want to ask something else?
No, actually, I want to speak to Andrea, but she left. That's fine.
Okay, no, it's all good. You guys can just catch up. Yeah, thanks to everyone joining in. Dave, really appreciate you being here. And then, of course, our online and offline listeners, this is quite a good episode this week. And we'll definitely see you guys again next week. Cheers, everyone. Cool. Have a great week ahead.
Thanks, everyone.